getting raided endlessly by the looters and bards, building a great wall like China's, and partially completing the castle were some of the things that happened in this 100-day series. Our adventure continues, and here we are back in the mines. And yeah, that's all I did for today. No joke. In the following day, I did some math and computed on how many chronicles and textbooks I'd need for the remaining tech we need to research. I then worked the mines once more, slowly but surely excavating the chambers one by one. And this carried over until the following day. But I guarantee you, this wouldn't be enough for the castle and walls I'm about to build in our land. Later that night, another settler escaped from the harsh beatings of a cruel master. She begged us to hide her or she'll die if she gets caught. My conscience will not let me rest knowing that her life is in my hands now. And so we welcome Isolda into our humble but thriving settlement. I started the following morning fixing Isolda's schedule, job priority, and equipment. I then worked the mines again, and that's really about it. Later that night, the negotiator appeared at the edge of the world, wanting to make a deal with us. Look, you bastard, we have nothing to trade with you, so why don't you just I have no anger issues whatsoever, I promise. I just hate these looters, that's all. And yes, I did work in the mines while waiting for the looters to arrive. The looters soon arrived at the top of the mountain. How on earth do they have trebuchets? They're just looters. They managed to bring my walls on the north side of the world down, and so I had to move my settlers from the west side to the north side of the Barbican. And as soon as the looters were in range, my arbalests let their bolts loose and straight into the enemy's hearts. We're very fortunate that all we lost were wooden walls, floors, windows, skeps, and the campfire. Nothing our trusty hammer can't rebuild. And well, for the remainder of this day, we just worked on the rebuilding and repairs of our settlement. Look at all these wild animals. You know, I really wish the devs put the priority button on the building phase so I don't have to micro this part of the wall. Look, some of you might not agree with what I'm about to do, but I promise you, no real animals were harmed during this recording. I promise.
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys!
The repairs and the rebuild of our great hall and kitchen just finished the following day. For today, I've already queued in a lot of the excavation to be mined out, so I'd have more time to do more active things like, well, like watching this fox float on water. Look at those cute tiny legs. Look at that goodest boy. Yes, he is. Okay. I was lollygagging for half the day. Later that afternoon, I actually had to build some bookshelves to store my chronicles and textbooks because it was taking much of my inventory space. For day 111, I just gathered more stone for my wall and castle project, and some more wood as well to support my mines. More mining was done on days 112, 113, and 114. On day 115, I had my settlers build a merchant stall by the city gates because it bothered me that the merchant and his caravan were just going around town. Literally. And once that was done, I did some good old trading. I traded away a heck ton of resources I didn't need for some gold coins. 110 to be exact, and back to the mines we go. I've also made a brewing station in our kitchen because one of our settlers was desperately thirsty. I'm looking at you, Solda. And once that was done, we turned some of our honey into mead. Oh, and we gathered some mushrooms too, cause why not? I considered making my settlers' armors out of gold, just so we can boast to our neighboring settlement that we are thriving. And so I queued in gold ores to be mined out. Day 118 was spent on mining once again. Believe me, there's going to be a whole lot of this in this video. By day 119, we were able to accumulate so much chronicles and textbooks that I just had to research some text on the tech tree. And not before long, another settler came crying at our doorstep. Trudeau was her name, and she asked us entry, looking for some peace and quiet. Well, I'm not so sure about peace and quiet, but I do need them extra hands for our upcoming building project. So welcome to our humble settlement, Truda. I then spent the whole afternoon fixing her schedule, job priorities, and equipment. Look, you old hag, just like what I told the other guy, we have nothing to trade. Go take a hike, you b****. I'm okay. Really. I'm okay.
Okay.
I queued in some more chambers to be mined out the following morning. Soon enough, the attackers have arrived. 15 enemies appeared at the edge of the world. Luckily, no trebuchets, so we made quick work with the enemies. A thunderstorm occurred that afternoon, and I was just pondering to myself if the amount of stone blocks I have would be enough. Is it? Will it? Well, I sure hope it would. And to be frank, I really forgot what I was doing during this recording, so I had to put this here in my script, laughing face. Okay, I promise, this will be the last few clips of me mining, because in this first quarter of this 100 days, I was also planning and visualizing how I want to build the castle and the walls. I started day 126 with the deconstruction of the wooden walls on the south side of the settlement. Once the wooden walls were demolished, I then tasked my settlers to rid the space of any trees or shrubs. And now that the space was cleared, I started to blueprint the walls. Now for the design, I didn't just want a typical straight wall, and so I made this wall slightly bent towards the western wall. Maybe it would have been better curved, but my wife likes it. Be like my wife. And right before the day ended, I blueprinted as well the second layer of the wall. My settlers then finished all the blueprints in the morning, and by late afternoon, I then tasked my settlers to deconstruct and clear the next layer of walls and trees. And by the evening, they have built the new layer of stone walls. I then tasked them to clear another set of wooden walls, and later replace with the more durable stone block walls. And by nightfall, the western wall was partially built. In the following morning, I went to work on the southeastern wall, deconstructing the wooden walls and replacing them with the stone block walls. And the next layer on the following morning. On day 132, I've built some floors, deconstructed wooden walls, and cleared trees for the next set of stone block walls on the eastern side of the settlement. All of these were partially finished the next day, and later that afternoon, I've also started to work on the northern wall. The design of this would simply follow the southern wall. And by the morning of day 134, I laid back and watched my settlers build the northern wall. And by day 135, we have completely enclosed ourselves within our walls. I've also started to gather more stones to refill our stock for inventory. On the morning of day 136, I have cleared the forest in the mountains and continued to build the inner wall. Later that afternoon, a citizen of Dartford found a settler faint and bleeding. It looked like he had a wood-cutting mishap, and so we let him stay and heal. Welcome, Bertrand, to Dartford. And soon after, I continued building the inner wall along the eastern side, northern side, and western side. I also had to move my garden because it was in the way of the inner walls. And so on the morning of day 137, I watched all my settlers go to work. And this carried over until the morning of the following day. Later that afternoon, I also watched my settlers finish all the queued mining tasks. In the following morning, I decided to make a third layer on the southern side of the walls, and build another layer on top of the western wall. It's good that we got to finish the walls surrounding our settlement because later that night, raiders appeared at the edge of the world, and so I was forced to wake my settlers up to defend our town. Spoiler alert, they don't break through, so here's another kill montage of that battle. Ah, satisfying. And by the morning of day 140, my settlers have gone back to work on the southern and western part of the walls. and by nightfall, I have also started to add blueprints on the northern wall. I watched them build as much as they could before they called it a day and went back to their night routines. Construction continued the following day, and it took the whole day for them to finish all the blueprints. And finally, I then put the last layer along the east and the southeastern part of the walls surrounding our settlement. I also started to put stairs in between levels. You know, it's been a while since our last trade, so I'm gonna go ahead and do some good old trading. Trading yet again unnecessary materials and resources for gold coin. And I'd finally have 271 gold coins. You think that I'd use this for an upcoming event, right? Right? Wrong. I'm just hoarding it for fun. Someone in the comment section from the previous 100 days also suggested that I make an underground base. So maybe if you're thinking what I'm thinking, you might have an idea what the next 100 day series would be about. But let's not get too excited about it, for we have a wall to finish. I started at the southern wall, then up the eastern wall, around the northern wall, and back down the western wall to complete our wall foundation. I've deconstructed the part of the sleeping chambers of my settlers so that I could complete the walls at the west side. And by nightfall, all the walls have been put up. And all that's left are the floors. Okay, maybe not all the walls, but most of it. And that's good enough for me. I actually didn't see this, but my food reserves were low and some of my settlers were unhappy and starving. And so I asked them to hunt polecats and goats to fix that food reserves are low problem. Well, nothing else happened this day except having more unhappy and starving settlers. And to top it all off, 3 rebellious settlers. Alright, just a few more blueprints and we've finally finished our wall. I won't bore you with the details of this day, not because I know the details of what I did, but because I really forgot what I was doing here. So let's just skip to the next day. But we just got rid of them On the 3rd day of winter 1356, I've started to excavate the mines another level deeper. Oh, don't mind it. Deep breaths, John, deep breaths. I've also placed in blueprints of wicker floors in the first level of the mine so that I can dig the level below. And we've nearly finished the flooring of the walls as well. I started the following day with some good old trading, getting not just gold coins but also some apple saplings and limestone brick to help us with our supplies for the walls and castle. I then just watched my settlers finish all the construction in the mines for the rest of the day. Day 6 of winter and the day started with a good family meal in the Great Hall.
Nice.
Then it was back in the mines for the whole day, and as soon as they finished with the flooring, I then queued in more stone voxels to be mined out. Yeah, we're mining again. I started this morning by adjusting their work hours, lessening their sleep time to 6 hours, and adjusting their leisure time to 6 hours as well. Hopefully that fixes all the unhappiness we're having in the settlement. I then asked my settlers to cut down any wild trees in our tree farm. And then later that day, I also started to make another mine entrance within the city walls. The next morning started with the digging of the new mining entrance. I've also removed the connection going out the first and the second entrances so that no enemy nor wild animal can enter the city walls. And before we finish this day, I queued in more voxels to be mined out. I added in decoratives that would make it look more like a mine, just like how I did it in the first and second entrances. Then I went to speak to the merchant and traded away beeswax and tallows for more gold coins. And since we're a couple days past halfway through this 100-day series, I thought of boosting our limestone brick production, and so I dedicated the extra room that I had to become a workshop and made 3 more stonemasons benches. For day 154, I overwatched my settlers digging in the mines and placed wooden beams to be built so we can avoid unnecessary concaves. Now that we are actually producing enough limestone bricks, I then put my attention back to the walls, putting floorings on the southeastern part of the wall. I've also started to put limestone block merlons on the southwestern part of the wall, and then finished it off with more floorings to complete the battlements. My settlers then finished all the blueprints the following afternoon. Then I worked on the next layer of battlements by adding some stairs, merlons, and flooring. And by the first day of spring, my settlers started working on the blueprints. But before they could even finish the task, a new settler arrived, and her name was Etheldreda, to whom we welcome with open arms. Now go get working! By the second day of spring, I added more merlons, stairs, and floorings to the battlements on the west wall. In the following morning, we were visited by another negotiator. But despite us having gold to negotiate with, I didn't bother because I can use this one whole day of negotiating, working on other things such as building wooden beams in the mines and expanding the chambers to be mined out. And by the 11th hour of day 4 of spring, 17 enemies appeared in the south edge of the world. The horn sounded, and the enemies have started their attack, bombarding the Barbican with their trebuchets. I stationed my settlers on the south side of the Barbican and waited for the enemies to arrive. And once they were in range, we rained chaos onto them. I then changed the variations of the corner pieces of the south wall and the Barbican. Once I was done with the variations and my settlers are done with the repairs after the incursion, I placed more blueprints to finish the battlements on the north side of the wall. I, however, noticed that they were taking a long time finishing this task because when they passed by the merlons, their mobility is compromised, so they are forced to walk instead of running. And so, as my band-aid solution to this situation, I temporarily put wooden floors to where I would put the merlons. After that, I then put the limestone block floors in between the wooden floors, and I watched them build the battlements on the northeastern side of the wall. Now I don't know if this would make things faster, so if you have any knowledge about building in Going Medieval, do comment them down below. And just a quick trade update, before we get back into the construction video, I traded away 1 million resources for 110 gold and 12 healing kits. Alright, maybe I think this is a slower method, but whatever. Once all the wooden floorboards were finished, I then put in the stone block merlons to finish all the battlements on the northeastern side of the wall. And by the end of spring, my settlers have finally completed the battlements. And before the day ended, I did some good old trading. On the first day of summer, I had my settlers finish the battlements on the southeastern side of the wall. And I had them work on the remaining section of the battlements. It's funny how the small section of wall is taking so long, and you'll see why in a bit. But at last, on the 4th day of summer, my settlers have completely finished the battlements on the east side of the wall. Other than working in the mines and having blighted crops, today is one of those uneventful days. Remember when I said,
It's funny how the small section of wall is taking so long, and you'll see why in a bit.
Yeah, it's because of this. We lost the wooden ladder in the previous incursion, so that explains why my settlers were going around the longer route to the eastern wall. Ah yes, it's one of those days. Animals are hungry, settlers are starving, and settlers unhappy. And for some reason, I forgot to tell my settlers to hunt for food. And by midday today, another settler joined us and her name was Molly. See, I did ask them to hunt. Only it's been hours way too late.
What the fuck?
I am such a dingus. Now that we've fixed the hunger problem, it's one of those days I dedicated my time in fixing everybody's job priorities. In the morning of day 9 of summer, while my settlers were doing some minor tasks, I observed from afar and planned how the castle would look like. I actually had to take a quick break here in real life so I could plan how the castle would look like. Once I figured out everything, the first step was to evacuate the kitchen and great hall in the middle of our town. The next step was to deconstruct the kitchen and Great Hall. And on the last day of summer, I started to blueprint the inner bailey of the castle. This would also serve as a choke point for raiders before reaching the gatehouse of the castle. There's also a reason why I made the entryway 4 voxels wide, and it's in preparation for the game's upcoming update. For the towers, I'm using my rounded towers design, so if you've watched my other videos, you would know what I'm talking about. I just noticed how the layout of my future castle intersects with the current building in the town, and so it took me one whole day to reorganize things. And another half a day to destroy the old warehouse. Once that side of town was all cleared up, I went to blueprint the southeastern tower. I've also added in the second layer of the walls of the tower and the interior walls of the castle. But before we could do any of the construction, we were ambushed by the bards. By this time around, I guess you guys are getting used to me getting raided, so I'll go ahead and skip to the montage. Once they have completed all the blueprints, I found myself worrying about our stone block supplies because it would surely not suffice. And due to my carelessness, day 184 was wasted on flooring the mine when I should have been mining the mountain for a resource already. And that carelessness was carried over till the next day. And now that I've run out of sticks, I did more reckless work and gathered trees when I should have been mining the mountain, like I said. These are just some of the things that I tend to forget to think about when I'm playing this game. I just do okay, don't ask me why. And now that I feel like I won't be able to accomplish my task of finishing the whole castle, I saw to it that at the very least, I get to finish the outline of how the castle would look like. I did, however, incur some errors along the way, but no big deal. Good thing my settlers haven't started on them yet. On these days, I have put all my focus, energy, and resources on the castle. You may have also noticed that I have started mining the mountain, so I won't be spending time in the mines for now. Let me actually take this time to explain my castle design here. So in this area where I'm mining through the stone voxels, this would be the throne room. Something similar to when I did my water challenge castle. Now, I'm aware that castle entryways don't directly lead you to the throne room, but it does in my imagination, okay? Can you just, okay?
Okay.
I've also made a minor change here, seeing that I wouldn't like the outcome of it all. So instead of having this section with walls, I deconstructed them and will eventually put merlons once I have enough resources. I know it's a waste of resources, but I was just running out of time and I was getting pressured. Help! Oh, and I got to check out some text from the list. It started snowing that morning, but it won't stop us with the construction. I've started to lay out the ceiling as well for the gatehouse. I've started to clear out most of the rock voxels in the first and second floors. I've also left some unmarked, so I could use them as extra foundation, to save on resources. I also put roof access via the towers so I could finally take the ladders out. We just did some more mining and interior flooring for this day. Very uneventful. I built my brewing station back as well since one of my settlers was so reliant on ale. I'm looking at you, Solda. Again, just more mining. I noticed that my fermenting ale pile wasn't fermenting at all due to the temperature, and so I did any right-minded person would do and built a brazier. And finally, day 200. I know I still have a lot of things to do, and so I just took this time to reflect on this series while my settlers put the finishing touches on the gatehouse of the castle and the inner bailey. And despite the unfinished castle, I was still excited. I just can't wait to see how it would all look like in the end.